you talking about classes too, or just packages and modules?
It's more. I really had a hard time figuring out exactly how I wanted to present here because it's more really about how to help the community. So I do talk a little bit about what a module is, and if you have specific questions on like packages and classes and how they relate, I'd be very happy to go into those. Overall, I only have like one slide in regards to that. After that, it comes more into like the social aspect of like what would well CPAN, what should you name a module, um, things considerations going into that, and then some fun anecdotes into my own misventures with modules. But yeah, I mean, definitely, I want this to be more of a conversation. I mean, I have slides that I can throw away if need be. So if you have questions, please definitely chime in, because yeah, this is definitely more of a. Are we good? Or are we?
Yeah, we're rolling now. So
Okay,
whenever you
cool.
want to start,
Okay.
if you haven't already.
Yeah, I'm kind of starting now. So this is definitely more about what you can do for the Perl community and how to plug yourself into it, and kind of a little bit about kind of this group. And at the very end, I have a call to not to arms, a call to presentation. So like your idea on the Perl data language, definitely very apropos time for that. But yeah, it's basically the idea of just kind of a journey as a programmer to get from you have an idea to how to help share that, and also go through the exact steps of how to share for Perl 5, and then a quick one on Perl 6. So basically, the bottom line of the whole thing is modules, and really. A module is just it's a class. It's the fundamental unit of reusable Perl code. So it's the one thing that you want to write once and then use everywhere else. It's where, you don't want to have to reinvent the wheel. And even when you already see a wheel, you might want a little bit bigger one, so you end up reinventing it anyway. But so modules are basically classes, and classes are implemented via a package or a namespace. It isn't a class is not just a package. You can have a package without it ever being a class. A class is basically based upon a blessed data structure. The ability to bless it gives you then two ways of calling methods within inside of this class. The first one is like a static. So once you've blessed a structure, or once you've blessed a class or a namespace, then whenever you call a method within it, it will get either the name of the class or the object itself will get put on as the first argument. So that gives you the object to basically either call classes in a static or in a class way, and then the first argument is the package name. So this would be something that would apply to every instance of this type of class for the most part, and then a variable or instance manner where the first object and the first argument is actually the object itself, and this gives you the object orientation portion of that. So that I mean that's basically what the modules are based off of. They are a module is just a collection of code subroutines with the idea of classing. You can then turn it into an object. So you can then do things in an instance fashion. So you can have many copies of the same code doing different things all at the same time, or not if you choose to go the other way. And I'll definitely show you an instance of that. Of course, with modules, we get to CPAN, which is the Comprehensive Perl Archive Network, where that is where everything gets stored. So honestly, if you have something that's more complicated than 2 plus 2, there's probably a module to do it. And there's probably a module to do 2 plus 2, but I didn't look for that one. So the whole part about this is us wanting to contribute to, help out. So these are the considerations when you sit down and you have the idea of, I want to write this module. I want to put this together. Well, the first thing you should always ask yourself, does it already exist? If it does, then you've got it. You're done. Is there something that's close? If you, unfortunately, I couldn't think of a great example of this, but if you have something the module's almost there, but it's missing a key piece of functionality, or you want to just tweak it in a different way, you definitely should consider, working with the author either by providing patches or extending the module into a submodule and adding the new functionality. Obviously, whenever you're thinking of modules, you want portability. You want this thing to work everywhere. Sometimes this isn't a case, like if you're going to write something for Windows, that's not going to ever run on a Mac or on a Linux machine, and that's okay too. But for generic code, you kind of want it, you want it to be able to work wherever your code's going to be.
Is that mostly because of paths or some other reason that portability might be a problem on Windows versus Mac and Linux?
Actually, no. With paths, you can use it's the CWD module, I believe, for the most part. It'll take care of that for you. It'll determine what OS you're on and then take care of that. So that not as much. I mean, it makes things a little bit more complicated. It's more along the lines of like specific drivers, like sound or. And I have not done this that much, but just like dealing with the Windows registry, you're never going to do that on a Mac or on a Linux. So that's where you get more into more specifics. Yeah, so it's usually more when you go. Honestly, when you're writing something like this, you're probably also dealing a little bit more in like a C code way, and you're dealing more with the hardware that's underlying the OS, or how the OS interacts with the hardware, and obviously many other reasons as well. But that's usually the main one that I've seen. Consideration backwards compatibility. If you're writing the module for the first time, obviously you don't have that problem because you haven't figured it out yet. But if you're going to extend a module, you want someone who's using the previous version. You don't want to break it, or I guess not extend it. If you're patching a module, you don't want to break its contract so that someone who's been using it for a long time all of a sudden can't use it anymore without changing his or her code. Object-oriented, pretty much everything nowadays is object-oriented. Again, there's a lot of power there. You get to do things, uniquely and in classes. I do have one example of a module that I've written myself, and I guess the way that I put it is, if you're going to put it on CPAN, you're probably going to do object orientation. I have closed the tab, but one of the modules that I've written, I call Erik, and it's my little debugging buddy. And Erik is totally not object-oriented. And it is done on a very, yes, again, this is not on CPAN. I don't ever see this going on CPAN. This is just, this is my GitHub page. And, disable site. Sorry. There we go. So again, this is a debugging module. Its purpose is, along with a lot of, its purpose is primarily this. It's, I want to dump out this reference. I don't want to deal with loading data dumper or where it's going to go. As you notice, I'm using double colons. I want to be able to turn the debugging power of Erik on and off for everything. Therefore, I never want an instance of Erik. So this is a great example where this is just, it is a package. It's actually, yeah, it's package. It lives in the namespace of Erik. So whenever you call it, you have to basically go Erik, : then the method name. But you don't instantiate an object. So really, non-object-oriented program is just when you want to put together a bunch of methods that really either have no relationship to each other, in other words, they have no shared data, or you want to affect them on a global scale. And trust me, if you've ever written a bunch of print statements throughout all your code and it says, oh, I think I got it to work, now I have to delete all this crap and hope that I'm right, having an off switch is really kind of nice. So again, there are times where you don't want to go object-oriented. But again, those are going to be quite a bit they're going to be very limited. It's either going to be a library or it's going to be something of a very odd, an odd grouping of structures or of methods, like debugging. The biggest thing, if you're going to write a module, it should do one thing. It should do it really well. You don't want to have a monolith. That's a program. You want your module that you check in to be concerned with one piece of information and its manipulation of that information. Now, mind you, that can be very complex, where, like, if you're interacting with a database, you could have one entire module that interacts with, an entire entry in that database, which could even span across many tables. But the point is, that's your one entry point to that information. If you all of a sudden have a module which does two very contrasting things that have nothing to do with each other, you're probably looking at needing two modules. So naming it. Again, the name, there are really no formal rules. There are only suggestions. I've broken some of these suggestions, unfortunately. Obviously, for one, if it's limited portability, like if it is for a Windows platform, it should go underneath the Win32 subname. Or if it's only available on 64, Win64. I don't know if that one actually exists. That's the first one that I found, so I just stole it. Use succinct, contextual, and descriptive names. When I say names, I mean in between the colons. Create a module that tells you what it does. If you have a module that's called foobar, you better have an object that everyone understands what a foobar object is. Otherwise, it does you no good. You want it almost to be somewhat self-documenting. If you are extending a module, so if you're taking someone's existing module and you're adding to it, or you're adding something completely new to it, you want to add on to their namespacing. This way that people understand, this is in relationship to these other modules. To avoid anything that just is not relative or tells you what's going on. Simple, easy, reduce, tiny, fast, small, super, and general nouns like devel, system, whatever. Great example of the first module that avoided this. There's the JSON object module, which basically decodes JSON and encodes JSON. Someone thought, I can do this better. So they wrote JSON XS. Well, basically meaning they used XS to speed up the decoding and encoding of JSON. They didn't call it JSON fast or JSON small. They told you exactly it does the JSON, and I'm using XS to do it.
But there's a lot of those.
Oh yeah.
So you're saying avoid them because
Yes,
it's
that's
not a good
bad.
idea.
Yes, great example would be test mock simple. My own damn problem. Sorry. Whereas I've come to realize that it actually should have been called test mock partial, because that's what it specialized in, was partial mocking. There's nothing simple about test mock simple. It makes mocking simple, but it doesn't make mocking the object simple. It actually makes it a whole lot harder because you have to do all the work. It specializes in mocking partial. Hence, stay away from simple. Mime light. It's mime, but less of it. What does that mean? Try to be descriptive. Mime light just tells you, okay, I think this means it's easier, but it doesn't tell you much about it. Not a good idea. Again, these things give you a hint saying, I'm trying to make it this easier. I'm trying to make it simpler. But are you? Like test mock simple doesn't make mocking simpler. It just allows you to do partial mocking. So think about the namespace. Think about what you're trying to achieve. And by staying away from these, you're going to get a better name that is more descriptive of what is actually going on. And once you've figured out a name, does that exist? So basically, you went through and said, I have this great idea. I didn't find it. Now you thought about the name. Now look again, because you've thought a little bit more about it. Maybe you'll find something else that actually fits it. It's all about refining and
Trademarking.
I'm sorry?
It's like trademarking.
Yeah. Well, trademarking definitely, but it's also about you're refining the idea in your head, so maybe you're getting new ideas of what to search for. So once you've got a name and you have the idea, basically it's time to build the contract, the interface, the API. Basically, how is the module going to work? What are its method? The method should be simple and clear. You shouldn't have a method that says, go and fetch me a pail of water down the hill. well, you should have a method that says move here, then fetch pail here. You should not have a method that does more than one thing. You should be striving for simplistic, small code that does one thing and does it well. As always use strict and warnings. If you're not using this, then you're just asking for a glutton of punishment. If your argument is, I need the speed, you're working in the wrong language. It's, yeah. So if you're interfacing with like an outside system, always return basic information, like Perl data structures. If you are hitting an API that's sending back JSON information, don't return the JSON information and then hope that you're going to decode it. Offer a method to get to the original raw data, definitely. But what you want out of it is you want something that you can work with, not something that you have to then do something new with. Now, you might use two methods to do this, but by using them in conjunction and getting your data structure out, it is then ready for use rather than, well, now I have a variable that does nothing, I have to re-decode the variable.
Does that help you, or does that cause you to have to make dependencies? Like on the JSON?
Yes. Yeah, yes, it could be a dependency issue. It could also be, it forces you into creating a smart, not dereferencing, a smart decoding area of your code. So if, it's JSON today, but someone threw a switch and now we're using XML, you're not rewriting code. You're only rewriting the code that decodes it, not the code that's consuming it. So that's why when you get to the back into your core, you don't want to have some encoded form of it. You want to have a Perl object, not a Perl object, a Perl data structure. And follow good style rules, and we'll get into those in a minute. And once you've done that, well, you've now designed it. Does that exist? And a great example I have of this one is a long time ago, I was working and we had this huge performance issue. I had no way of knowing where we were being hit. It was a CGI web application, so trying to use your regular benchmarking just didn't work on it. I looked through CPAN, I couldn't find anything that helped me time specific pieces of code. So I got a name, I'm like, okay, I need a timer, develop timer or test timer. And I'm like, great. Didn't find anything that fit that because nothing had this like, in between here and here, it's how many seconds. Then I went through, this is how I'm going to build it. This is the design. Halfway through these steps, all of a sudden I realized, I'm building a stopwatch. Stopwatch. There's devel stopwatch, which the module was there. I just was thinking in the wrong aspect of it. And I was going to basically reinvent the wheel. So this is why it's like through every iteration of considering where you're going to build your module, always end with, does this exist? Have I figured out a new way of looking at it? If I hadn't stopped to think here and look on CPAN for stopwatch, I would have rebuilt another module and probably had a worse name for it. So going to style, there's all kinds of rules. Obviously, the bottom line here is if you really want to study up on this, Damian Conway's Perl's Best Practices. But some of the pretty much kind of universally seen and that you actually see in modules is basically if you're going to pass an array, do it by reference. It's faster, and also that way, if you all of a sudden need to stuff more things into a subroutine, you don't know with your Perl where your array is ending. Use name parameters for subroutines. Basically, it says if you're using more than 2 parameters to a subroutine, then use name parameters. I'm a little bit more pedantic than that. I use them all the time because it always happens this way. I have the subroutine, it takes 1, so I just pass that in. Well, now it takes 2, and 3 days later it takes 3, then 4, then 5, and all of a sudden I'm rewriting it, and it irritates me. So I've just gone to always using parameters, or name parameters, sorry. As far as variable goes, these seem to be kind of accepted norms. If it's all caps, it's a constant. Some caps, or in other words, the first letter of each word is with the underscores, that's a global variable. No caps, it's just a local variable. I violate this all the time, but when you're writing a module, you want to keep to the best practices so that when anybody reads it, they will have an understanding and idea of this. Obviously, leading underscore indicates private. I've seen this go to ridiculous lengths where they had what they thought was a core, and they had an underscore. Then they wrapped that core in another core, and since that had other private variables, they get 2 underscores, and then they did it a third time. So we had variables with 3 underscores. It was great. But yeah, leading underscore is supposed to indicate private variables and also methods, private variables methods. Package and module names, always in this camel case with the first letter capitalized as well. And this is where we get to the underscore. Perl doesn't do any enforcing of privacy. That's one of the things I love about it. You have direct access, with some exceptions. There are ways of getting around some of this no, I forgot the word, but there is a way of getting around this. But for the most part, you can access the central data object of every object that you run into. That does not make that a great idea. If the person who wrote that module changes the core data object, you're screwed. You should always just access it through the contract that the programmer gave you. Always use getters and setters, those type of things. So if you see an underscore, be kind and adhere to it. It's not meant for you to directly use. Although you can if you really need to. That's the beauty of this. Perl asks you nicely. It doesn't require you to follow it, although it may cause you a headache later. Don't use export. I don't know. Well, I see it all the time. If you use H2XS to create your module, I know that there is an argument, so it doesn't automatically include export. If you use, I believe it is the JSON module, it exports encode and decode. That's kind of nice, but now you can't use encode and decode in your module. And if you did, all of a sudden it's stepping on top of it.
Can you briefly describe it? XS? Like what is XS? Like it's something about C, right?
It's a bridge language in between Perl and C. So
okay.
let's actually. I mean, it's a great. That's a great. So.
I don't mean to do a huge split. I just want to know what XS means.
Let's see, Perl. It's one of the things I've always stayed away from.
What's that?
There's a Wikipedia page on it, I never knew.
So interface through which Perl can call C or C++ subroutines.
Oh, okay.
The letters stand for external subroutine, or XSub, where external means external to Perl, some other language.
Okay.
So yeah, it's a bridging language. It's always, it kind of scares me.
Have you used Swig instead?
Swing?
Swig.
Swig, no. I've not even heard of Swig.
Oh,
What is it? Or
it's another bridging
oh, okay.
package, basically.
Yeah, I'm a shy programmer. I've stayed within Perl, but it's just wonderful, power there. But so with the idea of export, it allows you to basically muddy the namespace of another namespace, and I just don't recommend it. There doesn't, with object orientation, there's no need for it.
Makes sense.
So. Of course, as I mentioned before, best practices by Damian Conway, that seems to be the standard. I believe that most default, sorry?
It's got a book on it.
Yeah, 2, in fact, I think, a second edition. But also, I mean, if you use Perl Tidy the default way, it's using most of those rules. So, the idea here is you want to use style that everyone can understand. I mean, let's be honest, Perl can be written in such a way that it be very,
Or at the very least, your team.
yes, at least if not just the world, your team is able to read it. So yeah, that actually does bring it back. So general style, although this does talk more about what is generally accepted, in the Perl community. If you're working in a team, you should be defining this for yourself. You should have your own general style and following that. Definitely, yes, definitely. Documentation. This is what no one does, and I go nuts over it. POD stands for plain old documentation. It's fairly simple. You can either add it at the bottom of a file or in between the 2 files. As an example, like when I was showing you Erik. Erik is littered with POD because I did it. So basically, okay, let's find a method. Let's find an easy method. So yeah, here's a subroutine called dump settings, and here is the pod describing what it does. It gives the name, a description of it, how to use it, plain English language, and then even says see data dumper man page, because this is, interfering with data dumper. So pod, it's fairly simple. By doing it this way, like with Java docs, you have it right above the method, so you don't need to create a separate documentation for your coders. Your coders and your users are both using the same documentation. Basically, in pod, just describe the API, your contract. Tell the user, how do I use you? Describe the public methods that are available, how to use them, contact information, which so to report bugs. Fortunately, if you are publishing on either GitHub or on CPAN, those both come with reporting tools. So this isn't quite as important, but definitely, you want, if someone's gone to the trouble to use your documentation, you should let them, contact you to help you. Prerequisite and dependencies. What's required to install this? What do you need? Hopefully, normally it's nothing. Is it other modules? Is it other environments? Do you need MySQL to run this? Do you need who knows what to run this? Of course, you also want to give a change log and a versioning number. Versioning number should be stuck in version. Primarily, I've only seen like the 1.00. I've not seen something as crazy as the major minor patch, but that's up to you. But the idea of this is that so people can see the differences and know what's changed in between their version and the new version, and just to make sure that you're not breaking anything of theirs. And copyright information. I usually just take whatever either H2XS spits out or Module Starter spits out. But if this is a concern for you, this is something you'll definitely want to look into. We will get there. We will get to Module Starter. What type of license? There is the GPL, the GNU's GPL license, the artistic license. Those are the two licenses that Perl's under. These have ramifications, which I don't understand, because I'm not trying to make money off it. But anyway, documentation, your own code is great. This is, I think, a great area where we always can help our community. We're using someone else's code and something is wrong, do a pull request on their documentation. Say, hey, you said this, it didn't work for me, but this did. Help documentation get better. For if you're using it and you feel the documentation is lacking or wrong, do that too. I think pull requests aren't just for code. That's what everyone talks about, but definitely pull requests for documentation are just as important. Question? Okay, sorry. Testing, of course. If you're writing code, you should definitely test everything, especially your exceptions. Otherwise, you'll live this young man's fate. And of course, I put that away too. No, not. Sorry. So test mock simple, as I said, bad name. And, oh no. Why aren't you seeing this? Oh, because I just shift tabbed out of here instead of. Okay. Here, added failure tests to clean up several bugs. So if you notice, I published this first on October 6th of 2013. Almost a year later, I add tests to look at my failures. And what I find is, well, I incremented my version number, which is good. I made a change. I misspelled require. And fortunately, it was written in such a way that it didn't kill the module, because people were actually using this at this time. Fortunately, no one had ever tried to instantiate it without a module argument. I also misspelled provided with whatever that is. I created an if statement, which would never be entered, because it was supposed to be not and not, or not, and it was this or that. There's no way that I could. I actually even tried. I even tried to pass the parameters this way to get into this, and it was horrible. It didn't work. And of course, no subroutine name provided. Well, no, it wasn't a subroutine name that I needed. I need a reference to a subroutine. So this was all a year in my code out in the world because I never tested exceptions. So don't just test the happy path. Also try to break your code. Some lines you're just not going to be able to get coverage on. I probably, oh here. You're not going to see it gets cut off, but my second line in new, it's almost impossible to cover all the cases because the only way that you could call it was to call it in some weird perverted way, which if they did, that was their own fault. I don't think I mentioned it before. If you're going to die, you'll notice I'm using croak, and carp should be the other one. No, carp's the module, but basically, instead of using die or warn, these die in a way that reflects the caller's perspective. So if I would have used die here, no module name provided, it would have died on line 26 of test mock simple, which tells the caller nothing because they're not in my module, they're outside. They need to see, oh, I called it in my module on line 536 where I called test simple's new method wrong. So that's what carp and croak get you instead of just using die and warnings. So yeah, in fact, that was my next point. Use croak and carp when in your modules so that when you do die, you do get a better error message instead of, a message that tells it, oh, you died inside test mock simple on line 58. And it'd be like, no kidding, I called that in 30 different places. Which one of the 30 did I screw up on? Definitely use core tools that are available, like test more. A lot of very useful, testing methods available to you. How do you know what is a core module? Basically, just look at module core lists on your system. It will tell you what is a core module and what's available to you. Now, this may not be available universally, but it'll give you an idea of, are you using something that isn't even really available by default on your own system, or gets you in the ballpark of using something that is available elsewhere. We can get something on that later. Use devel cover. Figure out, this will give you a nice coverage report. I don't have an example of this because this is just kind of an overview, but devel cover will tell you, you covered these lines on this conditional, you covered this one, but you didn't cover the other one. It's just a very good way of putting this together. Okay, so now back to CPAN. We've got our module. We figured out it's nowhere else. We have a great interface to it. We've written it. We've tested it. We've documented it. Now we're ready for prime time. First, you're going to need a POS ID. POS stands for Perl's Programming Authors Upload Server. And it takes 1 to 3 weeks to get one. Now, it really depends on, because it is a manual process, for taking in the for processing your request, but it's basically at pos.perl.org, and I'll have these links and everything available. I'll add them to the meetup channel. But basically, this, I think I'm standing on the cord, and I just broke it. All right. So on the POS menu, you just go to Request POS Account. You give them your full name. Oh, okay, full name. Yeah, there it is. An email address. A website, if you have one. Your desired ID. Mine is my last name, Tank. And then a short description of why you want a POS, a POS ID. Now, mind you, a person is actually going to be processing this. This doesn't just go through a generator, which then spits out your ID. So actually put something legible in here. So again, it does say 1 to 3 weeks. I don't remember how long mine was. I did not think it was that long. I think I got mine pretty much within the week. Then you need to, well, I guess if you already designed your API and did testing and documentation, you've already started your module. But I guess this will be the start where you either use H2XS or Module Starter. So you can either, in the old days, we did this by hand. You had to create the directory structure by hand. Now we have a ton of modules. It used to be H2XS I used to use. Now I use Module Starter, which I really like. It gets you this little guy, which is Module Starter. It's a command line argument. And I'm sure there are more things you can provide, but basically give it the module name, the author, and the email address, and the module name. Oh, that's, I hit the up arrow, so that's hopefully this will work. There we go. So as you can see, it created a whole bunch of stuff for me. It created my changes file, it created my make file, manifest, which is basically which of these files will get packed up when you're ready. Created some test files for me. So it's just a real quick way of getting started. So if we go into the Phoenix Perl module, into there, and then lib, Phoenix Perl, there's my module. Whoops. And basically, so we would write, our code would basically go into this demo.pm, or if we needed, other submodules, we would then, have a demo directory with those modules in there. All our tests will go into the T directory. Not sure what the XT is for. Once you've done all... Yeah, there you go, extreme testing. That's where the hardcore tests go. So once you're ready to do it, you pack it up. And this is the easiest part about it. It's basically, well, hold on. So in your directory, you do a Perl makefile, and it makes your module. Then you do, well, it gets ready to make your module. Then you make your module, and then all you do is make dist for make distribution. Boom. It takes the version number that you have, it pops it on there, and there is your module, all ready to go. One warning, for whatever reason, unless they fixed it since the last time I tried to do this, Mac's tar doesn't play nice with Linux, and I don't know about Windows. The last time I packed up my test mock simple on my Mac and I uploaded it, I got a really quick irritated email saying, hey, you broke my project because I can't install your module because it won't untar. So try to use Linux or replace the Mac tar. I should have done a little bit more research on that, but I just booted up Vagrant and did it inside there. So once we have this guy now, basically our next step is we upload the tar. How do we do that? We do that through our POS account. So here we log in. It says, hey Eric, how you doing? And there we go. Upload a file to CPAN. And it is literally as easy to this. Now the reason of using a version number and having the version number, why that is important, is once you upload a file to the server, that file cannot be uploaded again. Even if you delete it, the file name, from what I understand, is used. So if you didn't have a version number in there, you can't reload up your module. That's also why when you do make tar dist, you get your nice version number in there. The other nice thing is that once you do have it uploaded, once you have multiple versions of it, they're all there. You can see these are the ones that I keep. After I did something stupid at 0.03, and so I didn't want anyone to ever use it again, so I actually deleted those from the server. But anybody else can get 4 through 9, and then my Ticketmaster API.
But you can still never upload 0.03 again?
As far as I understand, yes. So basically, once you've uploaded it to the upload link, you wait about 24 hours, and then you will see it on CPAN. And of course I didn't. So then test. So as you can see, it's there. The other nice thing that CPAN gets you is the CPAN testers report. This takes about a week to really start, gets populated, but once you've uploaded it, and it will do it for every version that you upload, it basically runs your test suite on many different versions of Perl, on many different pieces of hardware or OSs and architectures, so that you can know, does this work everywhere? At one point, I used...
Free, huh?
Yeah. And that's why, contributing to the Perl Foundation is a good idea. Yes, this comes up. Obviously, a lot of contributors here. A lot of people volunteer to be testers. They basically say, here, I have this system. it will take in, and some systems will process the tests much quicker than other systems. But overall, I mean, basically, as you can see, 740 different systems. So it's just incredible. And it gives you a little bit of peace of mind that the module that you put out there actually works. Of course, then you'll get other people who will then use your module. And when they figure out problems, they'll go in here and they'll file issues. So yeah, I have a few open issues. This one is impossible. I get, yeah. Yeah. So basically, yeah, once you have it uploaded, visit your CPAN testers. It's your best friend. And basically, unfortunately, when I uploaded the broken thing, the tests hadn't started running yet before someone else had to try to saw, oh, there's a newer version of this. Let me use it right now. Oh dear, you broke it. So sometimes your users will be faster than the test suites. Okay. So that's all Perl 5. Perl 6, a little bit more manual at this stage in time. Basically, if you want Perl 6 modules, they're at modulesperl6.org. You are supposedly able, through pause, to upload Perl 6 modules. I haven't figured out exactly how to do it yet. But, whoops. There we go. Nope. So, app modules Perl 6 will basically see somewhere here. I had all these open and nicely ready. So basically, this is what's currently available for 656 known modules and external modules. So basically, this is currently kind of the CPAN of Perl 6. They are working towards a better repo, like search.perl.org or meta CPAN. But for right now, this is pretty much it. If you want to, if you're interested in, if you need an idea for a module to make, check out Perl 6 Most Wanted, which basically tells you, come on. This is a great list to say, hey, these are these are modules that we have in Perl 5 that we would really love in Perl 6. Sorted by, they're somewhere in here. Really. So core functionality, native library bindings, Perl 6. You kind of have to be a smart person to do these, but it's a great challenge, and there's definitely an excited community that are looking forward to helping you with that. Basically, to contribute the module, the best documentation is on the Perl 6 page. But basically, you have to create, just kind of like we did with the module starter, this data structure, this directory structure. The base directory is your model name with dashes instead of the colons. Then in the lib, you have the directory vortex and total perspective.pm. So that this will actually be your module. The documentation, this is where you'd want your pod to reside, external. The only thing, as far as I understand it, the only thing that's really required is your module and this meta6.json file, which gives information about you and your module. Obviously, the README is going to be used by GitHub or GitLab to populate that front page. So these are nice things to have as well, but I believe the only things you need is this meta6 and the total perspective. So once you have that, you basically do the same. Well, there's the example of the Perl. Once you have all that, you create basically a Git repo, and you commit it. That's it. There's no tarring up like you do with Perl 5. Once you've created your GitHub repo, you basically go to this ecosystem and you do a push request to their metalist file or a pull request, merge request, I don't know. So basically you say, hey, I'm requesting that my module name gets put into this list. And if it gets accepted and merged in, then within 24 hours, you should see your module on the page that I closed just a minute ago. appearing here. So basically, that's the process for, creating a Perl 6 module and getting it uploaded. A little bit more manual at this stage, but a little bit easier because you don't have to do the tarring. You simply tell them about your Git repo. So, and finally, basically non-module ways to contribute. As I said, documentation. Use a module and give feedback to the author. Just tell them what you thought. Tell them what you would like better. Give them a patch if you need. Offer documentation. Documentation is a pain in the butt to write, so hey, give it to someone who didn't provide it themselves. Give a talk. If you like, please, any length of time, almost any topic, anything Perl related or in the programming universe around Perl, or save that a suggestion for a talk. It's either that or you have 7 months of database talks coming up at you. Go to a conference. There's YAPC that's here, and there's Europe, Australian YAPC. There are other conferences as well where Perl's represented. Or donate to the Perl Foundation. They do grants for people to work on Perl 6. They help, from what I understand, they help do the testers, get all that together. CPAN is primarily helped through mirrors that are offered at different hosting companies, but even that, you need someone to kind of watch over it. Not to mention the people who are watching over the current versions of Perl 5 and Perl 6. They are all getting grants through the Perl Foundation. So basically that's it. It's kind of a big overview of how you can contribute, whether it's through documentation, through actual code, or just come up here and talking. So thank you very much for coming out tonight. And if you have any questions, I'd love to hear them.
What about like big projects like Padre, the IDE that's written in Perl? I know you can download that through CPAN, but you said you don't really recommend something like that, right? That's kind of complex.
No, I'd no, definitely help out with that. Helping out with, if it more just because it's complex, don't shy away from it. It's different, I guess. I was more module specific, more tinier code. It's like, just write this one little piece of code that will help the world. But there are definitely many, Padre. There's Dancer, Moose. All basically, there are several type of frameworks that they're definitely bigger, but they definitely they need help with. They will be happy to have help too. I guess I was looking a little bit more microscopic than that, and I forgot.
My question was just, is it okay to submit it to CPAN or maybe just make a different website?
Oh, it's a good question.
Another way for people to actually download it and install it.
I don't know about Padre itself, but like with Moose, they started a whole new, if you will, top level module name, Moose, and then they have, many layers underneath that. So that is a more complex system that's checked in. Honestly, I can't believe I left all that out. There are mailing lists which I don't have written down, but I'll post them on the meetup groups page. That basically, if you have questions like that, feel free to ask them, and people monitor them. I know one of them is Complang Perl something, and they'll be happy to talk about that. I think CPAN is more modular driven, so even like with Moose, it is a bunch of modules that do one big thing, whereas that is more of a product. That seems like more something on GitLab, something that would reside on GitLab.
Yeah.
But
Basically, find the project you're interested in and figure out what their system is.
yeah, because you might find a great project that needs help, and they're based off of their own website with, CSV or something.
Yeah, well, I was
Yeah.
like today I looked up to see if there's anything on CPAN for ellipsometry analysis, right? And there's nothing. So like,
Ellipsometry analysis?
Wow.
it's using light to determine the thickness of your super thin films.
Okay.
Wow.
And it'd be nice if it had like an IDE and all of that. And like,
Sounds like you might be up for writing that.
Yeah.
then where would I post it? And
Well,
I
it.
guess CPAN,
Well, like.
if it has a GUI.
Well, but then it will be a combination of the two. So like the modules that would do the calculations, and honestly, it's totally up to you. The modules that do the calculations, it seems like those could be used by other people in CPAN. But then, if you're writing a GUI for it, that does sound more like a GitHub or a GitLab type location. But in your no one says that in the CPAN module that you've published that's you working with it in the documentation you can't just say, hey, this is written for this project, go and check us out. You can definitely put whatever you want in the pod and make the pod relevant. If there are other parts that it belongs to that are elsewhere because they may not be CPAN appropriate, for a very poor way of putting it, definitely put documentation about, hey, this belongs to this, so that people will find you, definitely. But it definitely sounds like that can live in both places, where you definitely have core pieces that other people may use. And I guess that's maybe more the idea of CPAN is you are committing code that will be used in different ways by different people. Whereas like with the GUI, obviously people may do different things with it, but overall it's a system around like core pieces of modules. So yeah, I would approach it that way, but that doesn't necessarily, I mean, obviously, yeah, as you approach your project, ask other people, show them what you have, tell them what they think, and you may get different responses. That's pretty cool. Awesome. Well, thank you very much. You guys have a wonderful night.